met, you've spoken to, or you recognize?
Hey, look, I think that, historically you have to look back at elections and see if the top of the ticket has had an impact. And, if you look at President Reagan, he certainly had an impact in 1980 and 84 on top of the ticket. President Obama certainly had a big impact in 2008. However, if you look at 2012, you had an election where essentially nothing changed. You had a president incumbent who was reelected, but you also had a Senate majority on the Republican side and in the House side that was also reelected. So essentially nothing changed. And so what does that tell you? Does that tell you that the American people like divided government? And if they do like divided government, then Paul Ryan would be correct in the sense that everybody has to go out there and run their races.
Where are the parallels here with Ronald Reagan in 1980? Because if you're my age, you can remember Ronald Reagan going into that first presidential face-off debate. He was perceived as not doing a very good job. After that debate, he was perceived as potentially doing a very good job. He then, of course, went on to be known as the great communicator. He did a lot for international relations, especially. However, you can't say the same thing of Donald Trump. You can't say that first presidential debate was a success. Anything but.
Sure, certainly, and you could argue that President Obama didn't have a debate in 2012. You could also say that President Bush didn't have a very good debate in 2004 against Senator Kerry. So, certainly debates are important, but at the same time, early voting has already started in many states. There's a process that's been underway for the last 18 months, and you can certainly see a separation in between, what's happening at the state and local level. Senator Rob Portman looks like he's going to handily win re-election, and there's a senator who didn't actually attend the RNC this year in his home state, and he seems to be connecting with voters. So there is a separation. I think you can point to races like that where it's a little bit different, and the speaker is letting folks know that the races are separate this year, and so there is going to be a divide when voters go to the polls.
What are the chances here that this one, Mr. Norton, is actually a little bit like, as far as the Republican Party is concerned, Bob Dole, 1996? It's generally accepted his campaign was a car crash, particularly the last 2 or 3 weeks of his campaign, because the Republican Party basically pushed him to one side, and then they got into a huddle and they said, look, we are going to take political power from the shires, from the counties, at a state level, and then his campaign crashed and burned.
Well, I think you had a president who, in 1992, was elected, among 3 other candidates. If you remember, 92, Ross Perot certainly split the vote and allowed Bill Clinton to become president. In 1994, Democrats lost control of Congress for the first time in 40 years. And then President Clinton essentially went to the middle and made deals with then Speaker Gingrich and then Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole, and was able to pass things like welfare reform in 1996. And so President Clinton's popularity was on the upswing going into that election. And so while Senator Dole may have had a message for the Republican Party, I think that there was, again, a split amongst the country where they were then satisfied with the job that President Clinton was doing, working with House and Senate Republican Party. And so I'm not sure so much it was Republicans pushing aside Senator Dole as it was the American people saying, we like what's happening here and we can see things moving.
Why is it Mr. Ryan is kind of being accused here of being the boyfriend who doesn't deliver, in as much as people are saying, look, he should come out and condemn Trump more than he has done, because presumably somebody at his level, he just doesn't, he's not spitballing. What he says in public about Donald Trump is a distilled version of the conversations that the other Republican Party is having, not Donald Trump's Republican Party, but the original great old Republican Party.
Sure. I mean, look, Paul Ryan's job is Speaker of the House, and what is the Speaker of the House responsible for? They're responsible for passing legislation that benefits the American people, and he has a coalition, amongst House members that he's responsible for, and he's looking at it in terms of maintaining the Republican majority for the House, which is his position, the third most powerful position in Washington. And so I think that he's keenly focused on keeping that majority and keeping the House intact, and so that he can then move ahead with the agenda next administration and work with whoever might win that. And so certainly there is some pressure on Paul Ryan to get more involved in the presidential election, but I think that he's pivoting and he's saying, look, I understand there's a lot of things happening in the presidential election. It's going to be over one way or another. in the next couple of weeks, and then, I, as Speaker, need to move ahead and govern. I think that's what he's trying to do.
James Norton, very, very briefly, 2 words. Who's going to win?
I think it's still up in the air. I think there's a lot of polling out there that says a lot of different things, but I think polling isn't what it used to be, so it's very hard to understand where the American people are at this point. So I think I put it in the toss-up.
Okay, that was 20 words, but listen, thanks so much for coming. Good to talk to you.
Thanks so much.